Kamala Harris must enjoy slaughtering babies. I'm not talking about her radical stance on abortion. No, it's not just white babies she likes to exterminate, it's the brown ones too. When it comes to Israel's war in Gaza, she's fully committed to maintaining the status quo. But since it's an election year, Killer Kamala can't just say that. She has to dress up her murderous ambition in empty platitudes. The flip-flopper-in-chief, if you will. Let's start with her recent interview and the comments she made on Gaza.
Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And that's not going to change. I've met with the families of the American hostages. Let's get the hostages out. Let's get the ceasefire done.
But no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done.
So we need a ceasefire and to monitor the way Israel is conducting the war, but we are going to maintain our current level of commitment. Does she even hear herself? So we want the opposite of what we have now. Specifically, she wants a ceasefire, but she's not going to change policy from the way it is now. Isn't this the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results? Sure, calling her insane is one thing, but the level of her insanity is what's so staggering. The United States' commitment to Israel during this war has been the one thing keeping the war going. Without us, the war would wrap up swiftly and suddenly. Just in case you don't know, let's look at what Biden's policy towards Israel has been. Consider this. Just this week, the Biden administration sent its 500th shipment of weapons to Israel since October 7th. Yeah, you heard that right, 500th shipment. We've sent more than 50,000 tons of military equipment, both offensive and defensive, to Israel. All these weapons are for Netanyahu to use however he sees fit, with no constraints, no restrictions, and no accountability. More than 40,000 Palestinians have been killed so far. Nearly 94,000 others have been injured. The rate of Palestinian deaths to Israeli deaths is 45-1. More than 100 journalists have been killed since the war began, killing 1 in 10 journalists on the ground. It's literally the deadliest conflict on record for journalists. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, says Israeli forces have struck nearly 70% of its schools in Gaza since the war began. Last month, the organization posted that, quote, over 95% of these schools were used as shelters when hit. Last month, the organization posted that, quote, over 95% of these schools were used as shelters when hit. 539 people sheltering in UNRWA facilities have been killed. Nowhere is safe. The blatant disregard for UN premises and humanitarian law must stop. While everyone was slack-jawed over Biden's poor debate performance, the Gaza Strip saw one of its deadliest weeks since the war began. Israel managed to slaughter at least 470 Palestinians. Israel also bombed 6 UN schools within a 10-day period. Doctors in the region have been recently reporting that Israel is targeting children as they are finding bullets in the kids' heads. Let's not forget the rampant starvation affecting hundreds of thousands of women and children, and that Gaza is on the brink of a massive famine. So for Kamala to see this war, see the destruction, know the extremes to which Israel is bombing Gaza, proclaim a ceasefire, and then continue with the same policy is ignorance. Sinister ignorance. But the crazy thing is her firm commitment to Israel isn't what she's been saying all along. Take a listen to her speech at the DNC just a few weeks ago.
With respect to the war in Gaza, President Biden and I are working around the clock because now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done. What has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating. So many innocent lives lost. Desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety over and over again. The scale of suffering is heartbreaking. President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
In fact, even a few months prior to that, and before she was the presidential nominee, Harris spoke about the atrocities that Palestinians were suffering in Gaza.
What we are seeing every day in Gaza is devastating. We have seen reports of families eating leaves or animal feed, women giving birth to malnourished babies with little or no medical care, and children dying from malnutrition and dehydration. As I have said many times, too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. And just a few days ago, we saw hungry, desperate people approach aid trucks, simply trying to secure food for their families after weeks of nearly no aid reaching northern Gaza. And they were met with gunfire and chaos. Our hearts break for the victims of that horrific tragedy and for all the innocent people in Gaza who are suffering from what is clearly a humanitarian catastrophe.
Kamala Harris was on the side of Palestinians before, but now she's not. I guess she would identify with John Kerry's infamous gaffe back in 2004.
I actually did vote for the $87 billion before I voted against it.
Isn't it weird how this year both Harris and Trump want you to know how excited they are to kill babies? Both are pandering to pro-abortion voters, and both are pandering to help Israel bomb and starve babies. When did politicians think that what we want is more dead babies, not less? Sure, they're insane, but the American people are the ones who refuse to hold anyone accountable or to demand a different approach. The question that remains is what will happen at the first Trump-Harris debate on September 10th? How will they differentiate themselves from one another? Are they each going to brag about how many abortions they'll let you have, or how many more brown Palestinian babies they plan to blow up from weapons that you and I bought? Maybe we'll get lucky and Trump will rant about how he's going to execute drug dealers. Pro-death is the new American way. I don't know exactly what the Founding Fathers would say about it, but I have an inclination on what they might think. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When our first unalienable right, life, is at stake, it's a sign that something is severely wrong. We no longer live in a country, we live in a cult. For now, you get to pick your cult and your charismatic leader, but I wouldn't count on that for too much longer. Thanks for listening to Overnight Opinions. Be sure to tune in next Sunday night for an all-new episode. In the meantime, be sure to check out my interview with former FEMA employee Celeste Solom. She's been spilling the beans on what the global elite's malevolent plans are. An expert in synthetic biology, she breaks down the dangers of nanotechnology that is in everything from the food we eat to the air we breathe. We also discuss hydrogel, the Antichrist and beast system being set up, the demonic symbolism at the Olympics, black goo technology, aliens, the COVID vaccine, depopulation, solar weather, and magnetic pole shifts. If that's not enough, stay tuned and she'll explain how the powers that be are planning yours and mine decapitation. This interview is too spicy for YouTube. Check it out only on alternative media sites like Rumble, BitChute, and Brighteon.